Welcome, everybody, to Too Legit to Crit, a tabletop role-playing podcast hosted by two people who are about as predictable as a rogue's edgy backstory.
Oh, hey now. You take that back. I mean, true, but damn.
It is very true. My name is Juan Santana.
I'm Atlas.
And joining us this evening is Kimi from Golden Lasso Games. Thank you ever so much for coming on the show, Kimi.
No problem. I'm very excited to be here.
Now, we're incredibly excited to have you here. It's, I think it's been a bit of a whirlwind because it was only last week we kind of started going back and forth and kind of going, do you want to come and join us on the show? And
I work best like that, so it's perfect.
To be honest, we don't have any other option. That's
right.
That's what we do.
No.
But I've actually been following you since way before the podcast when, the whole Twitter thing was going on and everybody was migrating, and I went to Mastodon to dice.camp and that's where I encountered you for the first time. So this is actually quite a momentous occasion for me.
Yes, it's been in the making for some time. It is fortuitous. It was foretold by the Macedonians that we would meet.
The Macedonians, I like that.
Also the Craig, because Craig also was kind of like, hey, have you guys done this yet? And he's like, no, we haven't. So
yeah, big shout out to Craig from Shadowlight and Persona. Tezrak the Imp Slayer, good friend of the show. So, Kimi, tell us about yourself.
So my name is Kimi Hughes. I am a little bit of everything, a Jill of all trades, if you would. Right now I'm working mostly on tabletop role-playing game design. So with my company, Golden Lasso Games. And we have a Kickstarter starting very, very soon, like in 26 hours or something. So that's exciting. I also kind of do a bunch of other things. I also have a podcast because and these days, everybody has a podcast. We stream actual plays, and we also do like an advice show every Sunday evening, Pacific Coast time. I don't know when that would be for you. Sorry. And I've also done cosplaying for longer than I will actually admit, because it'll tell you how old I am, and just a lot of nerdy, geeky things.
No, that's phenomenal. And so, going back to the beginning, and I don't want you to date yourself necessarily, but how did you...
But he's going to make you do it anyway.
How did you get into role-playing?
So I was working at the Renaissance Fair if you're not in the U.S., the U.S. has these weird things called the Renaissance Fair, where we pretend like we're in an English village, but generally it's like in the desert somewhere. And so we decided to wear wool in the desert. So I was actually, I played mandolin, so I joined a band. So most TTRPG origin stories do not start with playing mandolin, I know. But I started, I was playing the mandolin in this band, and we sang and wrote kind of naughty bawdy songs. And we shared the stage with some other bands. And we would hang out backstage in between shows, because we have like 3 or 4 shows a day, and you're there all day. It's not like you go do a gig and then you leave. You have like shows at like 10 and 1 and 4 or something like that. So in between shows, I was sitting backstage with people, and they were talking about, Dungeons and Dragons. 4th edition was just coming out. Like, it was like going to be the new hotness.
Yeah.
And I had always done role-playing online. So in MMOs, Ultima Online, eventually like EverQuest, stuff like that. And so that's where I was role-playing. So it was interesting talking to them about tabletop role-playing, which I had tried as like a youth, but like most like 10-year-olds who try and get through D&D, it was not like a smooth or pleasant experience.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What? Now, attention span? What is that?
Also just reading the actual rules. I'm like, no, that wasn't going to happen.
God.
So we ended up stopping and playing video games most of the time. But, and so, they invited me to a campaign, and eventually we started the Happy Jacks RPG podcast, where we talked about it. We were playing all these home games, and we were trying all these different systems. We switched to GURPS and all these different things. And then eventually we started doing actual plays, and then here I am today. And then eventually I started designing my own games, because that's the next step, right? That's like the level up.
That's what I've been told.
Yeah.
That's going to be a long way for us.
Us? That's a you.
Well, yeah,
I'll make it pretty. I'll do all the pretty stuff for it. But I'm not. Yeah.
One night I'm just going to be sat there and just kind of go, huh, and that's it. I'm not going to get it out of my head.
Yeah.
And that's how it happens, though. And it's just like, it starts as like this little like seed in your brain. And you're just like, that'd be interesting. And then you kind of like look and see, has anybody else done? Oh, no, nobody else has done something like that. And then 6 months later, you're still thinking about it. You're like, okay, maybe I'll just write some stuff down. And then a couple years later, you're like frantic about a Kickstarter that's about to start in 26 hours. That's how it goes.
Yes. Yeah. My favorite ones are the jokes too, because John and I will constantly be joking about like, yeah, no, let's throw this joke together. And then we stop and we're going, oh, wait a minute. Like,
right.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, most of the things that have happened, even this podcast itself, has been that little, I wonder if, and then it just kind of goes from there. And yeah, I normally torment Atlas and our close followers with these ideas that I may have.
What? They're not tormented. Some of them.
Some of them are.
I think at one point, which I'm not a parent, so I have to give full disclosure. I don't get it. But there was like a Bluey game you wanted to do. Right? Yeah. Everybody's response that's a parent is like, oh, I love that idea. I'm going,
Kimmy,
I don't get it.
You and I can talk after about designing the Bluey.
I've been like, oh man, I've been thinking about it so much. Like we can it would be so good. Like, oh, I'm so excited.
See, there you go.
There we go. This is where it starts, folks.
Yeah.
This is where it starts, and soon we'll be paid by Disney to create this.
Yes.
Yeah, right. No, we're good.
No affiliation. Do we have to say that for legal purposes? Like, sorry.
Yeah. No, it'll be us doing like the Blue Dog Family game.
Yeah, it'd be bluesy.
Yes, exactly.
Or as Azuli.
Yeah.
Bluesy and her sister Parchis.
Yes.
So,
oh man.
So let's before we kind of go into your career and your sort of the systems that you design, let's talk about your point of view as a player. What would be your go-to system? What would be your?
Can I time out? Yeah. That isn't your own.
Yeah. Okay. No, of course. I actually would never say one of my own, just because it feels weird to play your own games. Yeah. But it's very strange. You know, I don't think I can say like one system. Like it depends on my mood, and I'm one of those people who switches systems a lot. Because like, excuse me, like PBTA, I play a whole lot of. But then I really love, one of my favorite systems is also Traveler, which is like the antithesis of PBTA.
Oh yes.
But I love the heart of Traveler, which is like about the fragility of life and how dangerous it is in space, which like most people don't really think about that, but it's like, I love, like, even from the jump, like as a designer, looking on it now, it's different than when I first started playing. And I love character creation in Traveler. It's so much fun. A lot of people bring out like Fiasco late night at cons. Like me and my friends get together and we just do roll up Traveler characters just because it's so much fun. And I just love that. Like how many systems have like in their character creation, like you can get old and like you can your physical ability, you know, you want to stay in it long enough to get the correct amount of skills. But if you stay in it too long, then you start losing your physical abilities. There's just like right there in the character creation is like this very clear, you are a fragile, tiny little thing living in this giant space, and it's deadly.
It's almost a game in of itself.
It
the
is.
Traveler, the character creation. I remember the first time I did it, I was blown the fuck away. It was so much fun.
It's so fun.
But I always like gamey games where there's interminglings of different mechanics and games within the game are my favorite no matter what.
Yeah.
Like I've yet to find one that I'm like, oh, that sucks. But you know, there's some out there, I'm sure.
Yeah. I've been on
They'll stay unnamed.
Yeah. I've been on a kick lately, though, of trying a bunch of indie systems. I find they're really inspiring. They're sort of like I said earlier, I'm a mandolin player, so I do like folk music and stuff like that. It's game, like these little indie games you're finding on itch.io and stuff like that are like these little like folk art pieces that are really fun to kind of play and see what people are trying to say about the world around them. So I've been in a real feel like artsy, like very pretentious, I'm sure sounding like headspace with just trying things and like what people are like saying through games.
Not pretentious at all.
Okay.
I was
No.
actually about to ask if that kind of, I'll say love, because it's a love for like the folklore and the mandolin,
Mhm.
that whole thing. Did that kind of spur on your Vixens game, or is that just a happenstance? Because I feel like those two kind of go hand in hand a little bit.
They do,
like,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of like folklore and like well-built worlds and things
Yeah.
like that. I'm a huge Tolkien fan. My daughter's named after a
Ooh.
very weird thing in the Silmarillion, but it sounds like a normal
That's
name,
right.
so go me.
Oh, I'm for it.
Yeah.
I said don't tell her name online. I just realized I said
It's
that.
okay.
I,
for it,
I saw the
100%.
excitement in Atlas's eyes. It was like,
But
it's like, no, Atlas,
in my
we can't
head,
do
I'm
it.
going, do I know
We
what it
can't
is?
do
Yeah,
it.
I mean,
know what it is?
I can say it because I mean it's in Lord of the, and there's other people who have the name, but we named her Laurelin. So there's the two.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So in the Silmarillion, for those of you who aren't in the deep lore, there's two trees that kind of light up the world. There's Telperion, which is the silver tree, which is basically eventually becomes the moon, and then Laurelin is the golden tree that is the sun. So my daughter is our golden tree of the sun.
That's beautiful.
I love that
and
so much.
Since I'm also a teacher, that's like my day job. I know like not to give kids like embarrassing names. So Laurelin also sounds normal enough that nobody's like, is that from like a movie or something? Like it's
Like the what is it, 500 Khaleesi's or something?
Oh my
that were
gosh,
born?
I had a kid named Luke Skywalker, and that was their middle name.
Stop.
Luckily, but then I also had a kid once named Sandy Beach. Her last name was Beach, and her name was not Sandra. It was literally just like I was just like, oh, it's really cute.
Your parents hate you.
Yeah, it's like it's great while you're in second grade, but ooh, when you get to high school,
A lot of times, because I remember agonizing over the name of my children, but it was like, oh, I don't call them, and it was everything. The amount of scenarios that go through your mind when you're naming a child, not only is
so many.
What if he's in? What if they're in school and they say this? And it's also, I met one of those and I did not like that person.
Yeah. Being a teacher, that's really hard because there's a lot more names that you interact with. And
she has a whole roster.
Yeah, like, these are the names we cannot have.
Yeah, it's like Santa Claus. You got the good and the bad. Just no mingling.
Right. But yeah, I love folklore and things like that, and folk art and folk music and everything. So Virgins and Vixens was actually so first of all, Virgins and Vixens was the first game I ever wrote. It's a rules light feminist role playing game about the tropes of women in fairy tales, folklore, and mythology. So you start off as a 2-dimensional trope of like one of the things that are universal in all mythology and folklore. Like you can be the prize, which is the pretty princess who's in the tower and can't do anything and waits until someone helps her. And it's going to happen.
Oh my God.
Right. And a lot of times the story is like, they don't even have their own name. Like it's a story about them, but they're not even named. They're just called the princess or something. Or you can be like the witch who, heaven forbid, you have knowledge of things. You must be evil. You get away from our village, you knowledgeable woman, you.
Because that is the case for all women, right?
Exactly.
Like...
So it was actually they on itch.io they have these things called game jams, and like they've kind of changed now. A few years ago it was like you'd have like, okay, and we're all going to write games in 2 weeks. Just write whatever you can, do your best. It's more like an art challenge or something. So it was really fun, and it was getting creative. And there was one that was the folklore challenge. And I was trying to think of, I kind of write things from a feminist point of view, named my company after Wonder Woman, all these things. So I was like, okay, I was trying to think of a folk tale that was kind of empowering, and there aren't that many. In fact, I couldn't think of any, really.
No.
So, and I started like looking through things, and I was like, oh, this is a thing across all folklore. Well, maybe that will be what my game is about. It'll be a commentary on how badly folklore and fairy tales really represent women.
I love it. I love that so much.
That is the thing that stood out to me when I was reading about the game earlier today. It was I think it's a genius way to focus a very real problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You brazenly say it from the beginning. It's like, this is how you start out. You start out as this 2-dimensional character, and as the game progresses, you flesh yourself out. You become like
a real person,
a lot more in depth, a real person, as it were. And I thought that, I mean, that in of itself, just to codify that and to make it a mechanic is absolutely genius. It is stellar work.
Thank you.
We're always talking about how character development seems to be the most important thing in a good game. Like the game that you look back and you're going like, man, that was such a good story, such a good game. Usually there's character development and storylines in it. And I find there a lot of times I'll slip into tables where it's kind of like, I want to be the most powerful thing and do the coolest thing, which is totally fine. I'm for it. Like you smash that building. But the game, like you said, the fact that the entire game mechanic is built around the character changing, like that's fantastic.
Thank you.
And I think you really nailed it. So
and
cheers on that.
Thank you. It's fun, and it was like I said, it was like one of those things that I wrote really, really fast. I literally had 2 weeks to do the whole game, and it's
like NaNoWriMo.
Yeah, and it was like one of those like forced creativity things. It's like, okay, you've got to do it, so just go with what you want. And I've been really excited about like the reception of that. Like it was something I sort of didn't spend a lot of time on, and then when I did other games, I had it printed just so my other games weren't alone when I was at a convention table. And then it started selling really well. So it's
but it's a unique concept, and in this space you don't get to see that all that often. You know, you get, but all of a sudden you get this that comes along, and it is just sublime. I really, really, really commend you on that. I thought it was absolutely fantastic.
Thanks. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun running it and seeing how different people react to it. And a lot of times, men especially who play it, like will say, you know, I felt really uncomfortable at the beginning. I felt like I was like making fun of women by being this two-dimensional trope. And I'm like, yes, that is the point.
The point,
Exactly. You're supposed to feel that discomfort at this two-dimensional trope being disrespectful and not really what it's like. And then it's like they always are like, yeah, later on I felt okay. But like in that beginning, it was hard to be the trope and not feel that I was being disrespectful. It's like, you weren't being disrespectful. You were playing out these stories like they are usually told.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the prize and you mentioned the witch. Do you want to let us in on any more sort of tropes that these characters fall into?
Oh my gosh. Let's see. There's I would have to bring it up off the top of my head. Let me bring it up. If you already have it up, you can look it up. I feel like I should know this, but I also am very sleep deprived. Well,
as about the cough Kickstarter, cough. We'll talk about
it. That's exactly. I'm just like, oh my gosh. So there's the tropes are split into two sections. There's the admirable ones, the ones that generally are the heroines or the ones you want, which is the prize. There's the teacher who generally is like giving their wisdom and their knowledge and their ability to a male character so that the male character can then actually be the hero.
Oh,
so it's like you support them in their greatness, and like they aren't able to do anything, without you. But you're never actually mentioned in the story again.
Yep.
Yeah. The sacrifice, who generally is like they give up their life or they give up, something so that the male character can succeed well. Similar to the teacher, except like it's literally their life. Like they'll throw themselves off a cliff or something so that so that he can survive and be great, and usually fall in love with someone else at the end.
Does the call to action death fall into that category? Like, oh, my wife got killed. I'm now gonna go face evil.
Often, yeah. Like
hint, Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Right? Yeah. Well, there's I'm a huge comic book fan too. Shocking, I know, with Wonder Woman. But we call it women in fridges or fridging women, basically, and that's from. There was a Green Lantern comic where he literally he'd had like a long-term relationship. He came home and found his partner dead and shoved in the refrigerator. And it was like her entire character just became about motivating him. Yeah. So it's a trope. And Gail Simone, if you know who that is, or if you don't know who that is, look that up. There's like a whole thing. There used to be a website, but I think the website's gone now. It was literally like hundreds of examples from comics of women characters being killed off as motivation for male characters.
That's like in media everywhere. Yeah. It isn't here. John, Charlie, and Supernatural.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's everywhere.
Yeah. It's like, it's everywhere. And I'm just like, why? Yeah. Like, What's your opinion on Damsel? Have you seen it?
I have not. Everyone keeps telling me I should. Everyone's asked me that question.
That had popped in my head. I'm like, oh, I had mixed feelings about it, but in the end, very entertaining movie. My favorite character is the dragon, personally. I'm just like,
love it.
But that's
yeah.
I've not seen it either. I've just I just haven't got around to it, to be honest.
Yeah,
it is one of those movies where you're like, okay, I like this. Then there's parts where you're going, I'm curious when the script was written, if it was written before or after the strike, because there are parts of the movie where you're going cringe, like ooh, but then it gets good, and then it's like ooh, like
for me, the main sort of impediment I have is Netflix. I don't know. I don't know. I just struggle with Netflix movies.
Like. Like the production quality? Okay.
I don't know.
I thought there was going to be some like big British beef against Netflix I didn't know about. I'm like, wait, is this a Baja Blast situation? Like, I don't... They don't have them in Europe.
No, I don't know. I struggle with the Netflix. And don't get me wrong, Netflix, the series produce fantastic stuff.
Yeah.
So I should be a bit more accepting, but...
I feel kind of the same. Like the movies are really, they either like really hit or they really miss.
Yeah.
And like the series they do a great job with, but I also am a little bit like, if a movie's coming out on Netflix, I'm always like, I'll wait around and see like what people say about it. Like a series, I like jump on it immediately. But
the series all day long. But the movies, I just kind of go, is it going to be good? Am I wasting my time?
Connell just asked in the chat, Rebel Moon, anyone? I feel like that's a can of worms you don't want to open.
Do not talk about Zack Snyder with me. Do not. Like, we will be here all day, and it's
no, I'm with you. I'm 100% with you. Because I'm assuming you're a DC fan, right? Same. And so I get into very lengthy conversations about like representation and script, but not what we're here for.
I mean, we were just talking about like representation of women. So like in a almost 4-hour movie, the fact that there is literally like one woman character, because spoilers, the other woman character ends up being an alien who is in like who has changed themselves to look like a woman. I was like, wait, what is happening? It's just very strange. Like,
Rebel Moon for me had all the promises of like, yes, especially with female representation, because like the main character is a girl, right? And then you get into it and I'm going, oh no. It's just, oh no.
I didn't. I just opted out of that. I noped out of that real fast.
I took heed of all the warnings and went, I'm not going to watch that.
Yeah.
I wanted to like it so bad because it's like, oh, it's so pretty. And then you're like, ooh.
It's a failed Star Wars.
But
okay, so back
to, game.
Back to trying to find a topic. Okay, so
there's a trend. It's sci-fi. We can just segue right into sci-fi because you know how I feel about sci-fi.
Yeah. So let's talk about Golden Lasso games.
Okay.
All right. When did that get did that get started after the game jam? Did that get started to help you publish the game, or did you have that idea from the get-go?
I started cosplaying when I was a cosplayer. I mean, I'm still a cosplayer, but with kids and stuff now, it's harder. But I went by mostly my main characters that I cosplayed were Wonder Woman and Big Barda, also from DC Comics. So I went by kind of the handle Golden Lasso Girl, and that was like my Twitter handle and things like that. And so a lot of times in the cosplay community, people go by like their handles more than like their actual names. So you'd like see people and you'd be like, hey, and talk to them with that name, which is weird, but it's fine. So it seemed like a normal step since I already kind of was known in kind of the nerdy community with that. I also really just liked kind of what it represented. And one of the things with Virgin and Vixens, I wasn't planning on being a publishing company. I was going to be like, I might sometimes write like games as art. It wasn't until I got the idea for my card, like world building game Decima, that I suddenly was like, okay, if I'm going to do this game, it has to be an actual card deck. So I can't just put it up as a digital file somewhere for people to download. I have to actually learn how to make a thing. And that's really when Golden Lasso Games really started, is when I kickstarted that in 2020. And And that's really when it was like, all right, I'm doing we're doing a company. I'm doing a company. And really it came from like wanting there to be more women representation in the gaming industry. It has changed so drastically since I started going to conventions like 15 years ago, but it's still so dominated. And even when you look at great companies who are doing a lot of great work with inclusivity and diversity and things like that, a lot of times the top people at the company are still men. So even when women are making games, if they're getting them published through these companies, there's still this filter where they're, this creative team who's working on it. It's not a direct line. And sometimes when you see games by women, you can kind of see that, like their fingerprints on it a little bit, changing it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make my games without that like male filter for the most part. And and so I was like, okay, Golden Lasso, it's Amazonian, it's Wonder Woman. Like this seems like it's sort of what I'm already known for. It's something I love and am passionate about. I love Wonder Woman's been like a hero of mine since I was a little kid. And I grew up in a household that without a dad. So it was me and my mom and my sister. And at the time it was something people noticed, at least where I grew up. And so like I remember the first time I opened a Wonder Woman comic and it was this tall, badass brunette. I'm tall, you can't tell, but I'm very tall. And I've always been very athletic. And it's always been things that have made me feel very different. And suddenly there was this badass, tall Amazonian brunette who grew up with all women and was amazing and a hero. And that suddenly I felt like I was home and I had someone I could look at and made me feel okay for being different like I was. And so it's such a part of me. It just felt like a natural thing for my company to be.
I love that 100%, because like claiming that as your own, I think is, I'm putting some projection on here, but I would assume that when people created those comic book characters, like that's what they wanted. They wanted people to be able to represent and resemble that. And I think that's important that you carry that into your company though, because that does. You look at your website and it's like, it is very, very, very you. Like you can see it and I'm just like, oh, okay, I know what she's about. I'm all for this gaming system. You can tell what you represent just for going through your products on your website even. So yeah, good call.
Thank you. Yeah. And that's something that's really important because I think, again, like I was saying, like these games are art to me. Like, yes, they are a product. Yes, I want people to buy them. But more than that, it's me saying something and putting something out into the world. Because I do fundamentally think that all RPGs have a heart and have a message that they're giving you. And that's really important for me, is that that's clear in what they are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, you mentioned Decuma as that, and I have actually brought it up on screen because this I think this is the first thing I saw when I was just starting out on Mastodon and I started following your work. This was the first thing that I kind of came across, and I think it's fantastic. I do like world building games. So, can you tell us more about Decuma?
Sure. Yeah. I am a forever GM. I GM at conventions also a ton. But I like collaborative world building. So I got tired of when I was GMing games, I was bringing in parts from like PBTA character connections and then bits from Microscope so people could help me build the world. And then, so it was like, I was printing out all this stuff from all these different games to try and do a collaborative world building session 0 with my players. And I finally was just like, I have to be able to make something that'll be easier. And I'd played like For the Queen and A Quiet Year, which are both like card-based RPGs, and also incorporate a lot of interesting world building with prompts on them. So I was inspired by that. And so I ended up going with tarot cards, which at the time I didn't really know anything about other than they were pretty. Because I wanted the deck to create 3 different things. I wanted one section to be like character connections for the PCs. So you basically come and you sit down with a PC concept, at least. You can have the character made already if you want. And the one set of cards, you have it there on the screen. Good job. So one set of the cards, basically I've split the tarot deck into 3 different sections. So one set builds the character connections. One set builds like the details of the world. So locations, NPCs, folklore, things like that. Like what slang do they use, stuff like that. So it's like really interesting and deep. And then the last group, which is the major arcana cards, create like the world dynamics and the party's reputation in the world already. So it's like, who owes you money? Who, is angry that you never finished that job or whatever it is, things like that. So the whole goal, because I was a GM, I wanted it to be small. So there's no books involved. You just take the tarot deck and hand out the cards, and everyone answers the card, the one that faces them.
Yeah, and they're gorgeous too. Like,
they are.
I'm just like, oh, they're so pretty.
Spectacular.
Now, you said earlier when you started building this game that you realized like, oh, you actually have to like print out the cards. Do you print them out, or do you have a third party printer?
Oh, no. And it's gotten big enough. At the first printing was like a very high cost, like kind of local person. I've since I've since had to expand it because a lot of people really like it. So actually, I have the next run of Decima is coming in, and I order it by the thousands now. So
okay. I was hoping. I was like, oh my god, I hope she doesn't make this by hand.
Oh no.
I've done that before, and I'm just like, no.
Yeah, the first I play tested this game for about 3 years because it was really important to me that it was truly system and setting agnostic. So you can play like Traveler, Generation Ship, you can play D&D, Forgotten Realms. You can play. I've had people also play it as a standalone game sometimes, not just for prep. So I've had people run it at conventions and be like bacterium under a microscope, and they create their whole little world in their little slide. And like the day the moisture comes is like a religious day. It's like they get into it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
that's really fascinating.
Yeah, it's very it's very fun.
Oh, and yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the idea of separating the prompts into 3 different sort of categories, as it were, I think that's really, really interesting, because in the description you state that, okay, so your character, you've already done the connections for your character, then just take those cards out and play with these. So as a GM, you can pick and choose what parts of Decima to incorporate into your game.
Yeah, and I did that because, again, I play so many systems. So like Powered by the Apocalypse, like one of the things it's famous for is during character creation, there's these awesome questions that are very tailored to whatever PBTA hack you're playing. So if you're going to have those already built into your system, just leave out those sun cards, and then you can play with the star and the moon cards, and that'll create your location and then their reputation in the world. And the same thing if you're playing an adventure, a D&D pre-written adventure that already has a very fleshed out city or something like that, you can just leave out those star location cards, and you just do your connections and their reputation.
I love this so much. I want to buy it and give it to some friends of mine. That I just want to like slide it under the table to them, like, hey.
Yeah. So it was really an invention of necessity, because I was a GM and this is what I wanted for myself as a GM. I wanted a tool that did this. And there were some systems at the time who did it. Some of them are even tarot based, but all of them you had to like have this book to look up, what does this tarot card mean? Yeah. And it was just like, it was clunky, and you had to have, the tarot cards, but also this big book, and you have to pause every time someone flipped a card. And it was just like, no, I want it to be simple. Like when you play For the Queen or Quiet Year, you just flip over the card and read what it says.
Yep.
No, I think that's phenomenal. So how much in your games is this present? How much of the world that you play in is defined by Decima?
When I'm GMing?
Yes.
Most of the time, I almost never GM without it anymore, just because it was the thing I wanted and I made it, so why don't I use it? But I'm also a very improv style GM now. I've done it enough, and I've done it enough at conventions and with strangers and stuff like that, that pretty much if, in a system, if I'm familiar with the system, if we play Decima, then I'm ready to go right then. So I don't take a lot of time to prep things. I also... It saves so much time because the players know as much about the world as you do. So you don't have to waste your, I like the thing. Oh man, like the first session of a game where you feel like you lose your voice as a GM because you're talking. There's so much exposition. Like, here's the stuff, and they're like, "Well, my best friend, the blacksmith, where do they live?" And you're like, "Oh, you mean the blacksmith that you've known since you're 2? Let me tell you where, all about this person." And it's like when they come up with it themselves, 1, you don't have to stress too much about it. You just have to kind of take notes. 2, they have this ownership of it and this like connection to it. Like they came up with their friend, the blacksmith, who they've known since they were 2. So they tell you about it, and it just, they hit the ground running that first session instead of you having to explain everything because they made everything.
That's interesting.
No, that is.
Yeah. We're kind of going through something similar. Although I'm sitting going like, man, I need to buy this deck of cards and just like slide it under the table because we're all in a Discord chat and we're like all of our characters. We're building a new game. Our home table rotates through 3 GMs, and it's great. Everything's wonderful. We're playing Level Up 5e. There's this thing where we are building our story. Like all the players know each other. We started out together. We left. We're coming back. Whatever. And so it's nice being able to be like, oh yeah, so and so. I know about that because that happened and that happened. But like, as a GM, I know the whole thing of like, oh, like, where are we gonna go? We got that thing, right? Do I know about that thing? I'm like, I don't know. Do you know about that thing? Like, do you want to know about that thing? I don't know. It's whatever. But no, those cards are very beautiful. I love them.
And it won an Emmy, which is super surprising and very exciting.
I was gonna ask you that because I saw the award and I'm like, oh, but I didn't see what it was for. So I was like, was that okay?
How does that feel?
Wild. Like, super wild. And like the fact that it was like the first game that I made versions of Vixens, but it had only been a digital release at that point on the itch. And I was like, but like the first thing that comes out and then it gets like, first just being nominated was very exciting. I was like, oh man, I made it. And then I was actually like, I thought there was 0 chance that I was going to win. And I wasn't at Gen Con. And like, it was one of those things, I was literally at the pool with my daughter. Like, so it was like the phone's like kind of playing and I'm like kind of listening because I was not expecting to do it. And then I won and I was like, oh, and I was like, my daughter's like, what, Mama, is everything okay? Yes, everything's fine. I was like very excited. So it's weird. It's very surreal.
Well, that's a great story too. I love the fact you weren't even there. You're just like living your best life and like, oh my God, I won.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
No.
I love it. That's so good.
That is absolutely phenomenal. And we will get back to some of the rest of your work because we find it absolutely fascinating, but we do need to take a quick break to give a shout out to our partners this evening. Okay, so check out Deals of Opportunity. It's the automatic, simple, and free way to save on tabletop role-playing games. You just add your drive-through RPG and Dungeon Masters Guild wish lists and get notified anytime a title on your list goes on sale. You just set it up and save. Also, 13th Moon Games is a family-run indie game company out of Wyoming, USA that created the tabletop role-playing game Coven and Crucible. It's a game of modern-day witchcraft. If you can imagine the John Wick movies and the last Witch Hunter movie got together and had a really pretty baby, Coven and Crucible would be it. All right, so give them a follow on Threads, on Instagram, Coven and Crucible. We've played it. We absolutely love it.
Good people. I play mine for the first time on the 14th. Yay! There's a date. I'm excited.
All right. And lastly, check out our merch store where you can find t-shirts, hoodies, desk mats, and other items with either our logo or our supernatural inspired waffle on design. If you want to support us more directly, you can head to our Ko-fi page and make a one-time donation or subscribe to our $3 a month tier, which will give you exclusive Discord access and a mention in our credits. And as always, the best way to support us is by hitting that subscribe button and telling your friends about us. So,
even if it's trash talking, if it's trash talking, like bring it on. Let's go.
Speaking of, I posted a short the other day, and one comment I genuinely did not know how to respond to, and the comment was that I sound like Tyson Fury.
I don't know how to respond to that either.
That was it. That was the comment. It wasn't good.
What platform?
It wasn't. That was on YouTube. It wasn't good. It wasn't bad. It was like, dude sounds like Tyson Fury. It's like,
Connell says you do. He can hear it.
YouTube has like wild comments sometimes. Super.
Yeah.
What's super fun is when like you have like content on there that's like like 13 years old, and then someone like goes in and does a comment on it and is like, I can't believe you did this, fix it for next time. I'm like, what? Okay.
Dude,
like,
too late.
Yeah. Been a minute.
Way too late. I always feel like that creeper on YouTube. I'll find a music video or something that I love or a video, and I'll go in the comments like, "This is great," and then I look at the date and it's like 2002. I'm like, "Oh no!"
I do that all the fucking time.
2 years is nothing. That's fine.
Okay.
Like it's 5 years. Okay, like 7+ years. You're like, why are you telling me to fix things? I mean, if you like things, I'm sure people love to hear that anytime. So
it's not only that, because it's the comments that are on stuff from like 10 years ago that are angry about it as well.
Yeah.
They're the ones that get me the most, because it's like, has this not passed? Are you not fucking over this by now?
Yeah.
This literally came up. One of my friends on TikTok, someone had commented like, I think a year or two ago on one of her videos forever ago, came back and did it again. It was like, oh, so we're still here. And she's just like, are you okay? Like, do you feel better about yourself? Did you need to get that off your chest? Like what? What are people doing? Like, what? I don't know. Oh, well, we love them anyways. I love comments, good or bad. I'll interact with them. I have a hoot with it.
All right. Okay. So back to Kimi. All right. So we've spoken about Decimo. We've spoken about Virgins and Vixens. We will mention the Kickstarter, because I imagine there's a lot to talk about. But the one I saw which intrigued me was Mains and Magic.
Yeah, that one. I wanted to hear a story on that one.
Yeah. So it's still in development. That one's not out yet. That one's like my next project after the Kickstarter. So Mains and Magic is like, I basically wrote the game I wanted to play with my kid. So I was a horse girl. I loved anything unicorn related, anything that had horses or unicorns or Pegasi, like any of those things. Love it. And my daughter is sort of following that same little path. Shocking. So I was like, I want to write a game that's, it's going to get like all kids. It's not gendered. Anyone can love it. But specifically, it tends to be predominantly like young girls who love horses and unicorns and like pastel My Little Ponies. So I wanted a game for that. That was, it really rules easy. Like it's a very simple system. It's built on the same mechanics as Virgins and Vixens, where you have like kind of descriptors about your character and you just kind of roll. And when you don't do something, you earn XP you basically learn by failing. Because I think
that is a great thing to establish. Oh my gosh.
Especially for kids, right? It's important for them to realize that like you get better at things by trying. You don't have to succeed all the time. And I think that's a really important thing for them to learn. So that's sort of the design intent there, is it's going to be like these little baby unicorns. And as you play, you kind of level up and you grow up and you become an adult unicorn. So
I love that. I'm not even joking. Like I was never a horse girl. I was a unicorn girl. I still have like 14 mini statues of unicorns that I collected as a kid. Like it's in a box right now because I'm currently moving. But the new house I'm moving into, my game room / office, was the little girl's room, and she's got this unicorn decal on the wall, and I am leaving it. I'm absolutely leaving it. I'm like, I'm not touching that.
So
like, you rock on.
So first of all, you heard it here first, folks. Atlas is moving.
Oh yeah. If you didn't already know, like a million times I've said it.
But what I'm getting from you, Kimi, is put some money aside, because I will be having to buy this for my daughter.
Hopefully, yeah. One, it's just my personal little fantasy. I loved like working with an artist to make these adorable, like different looking unicorns, because they're all based on different elements. So there's like the water one.
What is that one? The yellow with the blue. What is the one right on the left?
That's the like water one. So it's based on like tropical fish. So
yes, I want to play that one.
Yeah, and it's got a tail and it can swim. It goes on land too, but like that's one of its starting powers. Is it when it goes in the water, kind of like Splash or whatever? Like it gets a tail when it gets wet, and then
oh my god,
so they each start with like a very tiny amount of power, like a little power, and then like the ones with the wings are obviously like the flying unicorns, and then as they get older, they get better at their powers and they learn more powers.
I need this game.
I do. Yeah, I do.
Like I said, 7 nieces. I need this game.
Yeah, I've already got games that I can play with my son, but now I need games to play with my daughter.
I love that, by the way. Slight tangent, like whatever. But like, I remember hearing about D&D growing up, and it was very much so like the big kids game, the adults game. And I never had a chance to play it until I was much, much older. But like, it should be a family game. It should be like age friendly across, or not necessarily D&D, but tabletop role playing games. Like the concept of games, it doesn't have to be just a board game. It doesn't have to be Monopoly or Chutes and Ladders, whatever. I'm aging myself by listing those names, but you know, like I love that you were just like, I want a game I can play with my daughter. Here we go.
Yeah.
And I think that's perfect because it should be all inclusive, not just like race and age and gender, but like it should be family friendly. Not everything, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I would play this with my son.
Unfortunately, our show is not that.
Yeah.
I would play this with my son, but he's getting to an age where the things that don't fall into his specific interests, he's got no interest in. So unless it's Fortnite,
Right. Yeah.
you know, so yeah, I tell you what, if there were Fortnite was all about unicorns, I could get him into this game, no problem.
No problem. Yeah.
But yeah,
You should introduce him to like the old school, like the dark unicorns, like the moss swamp unicorns, like the ones that were used on
the
battlefields
kelpies,
for their horns.
Mm.
Yes, yeah, get the like battle horns.
Yeah.
but
So
yeah,
this is
so
also this game is also sort of part of my like master plan to bring more like women and girls into the hobby, because there's not a lot of like gateway games for young girls. Like there's a lot of there are games designed for kids, but and they some of them are really great and like very anybody can play them and I love them, but there's nothing that's targeted specifically at that age group to like be their first step into the hobby. The first thing, like when they're walking by at the game store, they see the cover and like, oh, I want that, you know?
I love that.
yeah, I think it's because tabletop gaming isn't something that kids are necessarily introduced to automatically through cultural osmosis.
Mm-hmm.
It's something you have to kind of present to them. And without going into other names, I have bought like kid-friendly games for my son, and they do a good job in the sense of, okay, so if your kid's around this age, use this set of rules. If they're a bit older, use that set of rules. But what I found with it was there was nothing that immediately grabbed my son.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was nothing in that system. There was nothing in that world which immediately grabbed him without me having to basically homebrew stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think this Mains and Magic, I think that has that. I think that has that level of lore, which, you know, I certainly know one little girl that will go batshit insane over this.
Yeah.
You know, just the fact that it's unicorns.
Yeah,
Exactly. So it
tropical fish unicorn. I love that.
Yeah. So and you can kind of see in the art there's like the little babies, and then that's what they start as, and then you grow up. But and there is also I'm thinking of doing like a compendium one. I already have the art for dragons too. So then you can do mixed parties if you want. Like some want to play little dragons and some want to play little unicorns going on their elemental magic adventures together. So yeah.
I love that.
I mean,
I'm excited to see where this goes.
I want to play it. I mean, with my daughter or not, I want to play this game.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
You know, you telling me I could
feel
be
like
a unicorn or a
who's on
dragon
hiatus right now would want to play it too. Right? What if I would be both? What if it's like, I don't know how that would work.
Yeah, there's going to be different.
I'm gonna work on that.
There's different playbooks, but you never know. You know, maybe I'll do a whole like mythical compendium where you can like each one is like a different type of like mythical creature.
Absolutely.
We are going to be waiting for this. But first,
you're gonna get an email and a nudge and a notification, like, hey,
keep working on this. Do this one.
Yeah. So
how's the unicorns? How's the dragons?
We don't want to pressure you, but But before any of this happens, and way before our Bluey game,
Yes.
you have a
so
Kickstarter
excited.
starting in what must be about 25 and a half hours by now.
Yes, about that. Tomorrow morning Pacific time. So that is for Starscape. Starscape is based on Powered by the Apocalypse. There are new things built on top of that, but it is a found family sci-fi game. So it is about, you definitely go on adventures, you do exploration, things like that, but is mostly about the relationships with the crew and how their trust in each other changes over time. And trust is actually a mechanic in the game that is a type of currency that you earn, and then you like wager and spend it to interact with your crewmates. So it's something that is very tangible in the game. If you don't have any trust, it's really hard to interact with your crewmates in a meaningful way. And you mark conditions and things like that. And so it was basically born of my love of Star Trek and Farscape and Firefly and all these games. And
You're like my homegirl right now. I'm just like, yes.
Yes.
Names a kid after like Lord of the Rings. She's got Star Trek and Farscape. I'm down
I feel like
for
we
it.
just
Let's go.
became best friends, 100%.
Yeah.
So,
absolute besties.
so in March of 2020, I had just kickstarted Starscape. It had just funded, and then this little thing called COVID happened.
I heard about that. It was like
What was that?
A blip.
What was that? Yeah.
Sorry.
So yeah,
I was
so
asleep. I missed it.
Yeah. So we were all locked down, and then in April, I was taken to the hospital. But unlike most people who were going to the hospital at the time, I went to the labor and delivery section of the hospital and had my first child, which was a really scary, weird experience. And nothing was like we thought it was going to be with that. And like we were alone, like no family was allowed to be there. If I'd given birth on my actual due date, my husband wouldn't even have been allowed to be there. Like I would have had to do it all by myself. So we were very lucky. It was like 3 days when they changed after that. We changed that rule, but we weren't allowed to leave the room for anything. Like it was scary and weird. And then we brought her home and it was still scary and weird. So it was one of those things where I was sitting here with this new baby in my arms and nowhere to go. So I started binge watching Star Trek Next Generation. Yes. And at first I just thought it was like, hey, this is just nostalgia. I like the show. But like looking back on it, I think I needed to see something like, you know, hindsight being 2020. And like, I needed to see something where people were isolated together and still happy and still able to do interesting things. And I just glommed onto sci-fi so hard. And at the time I didn't realize why, but I watched all of Star Trek Next Generation. And then I watched all of Firefly again. And then I watched all the other Star Treks. And then by then I'd had this idea for this game that was about adventures and about what you do in the world, but it's mostly about how you and your crewmates survive together on your moving, isolated home is basically what it is.
I love that so much. Like, I feel like any real life situation, to be honest, and this is absolutely biased and I'm aware of that, but any real life situation can be dealt with sci-fi.
Yeah.
Like anything.
Yeah.
Like absolutely.
Yeah.
You got family issues, sci-fi. Got like, you know, pandemic, sci-fi.
Yeah.
Like it's
There's
just
a Star Trek episode for that. So.
Yeah,
there
always
is. There is. You know how people are about their Friends episodes? We have Star Trek.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah,
Star Trek tends to be less problematic.
Yeah.
Don't even get me started.
So yeah, that was a big kind of impetus for the design. I actually was going to run like an online game for my friends, and I went looking for something that captured what I was loving about these shows, and I couldn't find a system that did that. So I looked at a whole bunch of different sci-fi systems. Like I said, I love Traveler, but all of them were focused so much on like the mechanics of sci-fi, like how much damage does a phaser do, like all this stuff. And that's not what I cared about. Like I didn't want that. I wanted the experience of these people living together. Like, why does Data have a cat? Like all these things, like all these small little details, which are why we really love these shows. And why you can, like, people keep asking me, they're like, how did you make a game? Because you in Starscape, you create your own world, and you can play in any sci-fi property if you want, or you can create your own thing, and there's a process for that. But people are like, there's no way you made a game that you can play Star Trek in and Battlestar Galactica in and Firefly or Farscape in. And it's like, well, you can't play all of them at the same time, no. But
But
Yeah, but you can, because at the heart of it, the thing we love about all these episodic sci-fi shows is their interactions and their relationships together and how those change because of their adventures. So once you find that as the heart of the game and you make that the heart of the game, then it doesn't, then anything else can be dressed up to be like, okay, you're fighting a Cylon now. Oh no, wait, you're fighting a Borg now. Oh wait, you're fighting a Reaver now. Like how you describe the other things doesn't matter once you have that core heart and the ship, which is almost always as big a piece of the story as a main character.
So do you have ship mechanics?
We do have ship mechanics. You pick, there's 5 ship types. So you pick whichever one you want to start with, and then you go through together and you customize it and you make it your own. So you can pick the living being or the throwback, which is like if you wanted to play like Treasure Planet or something where it's like tall ships in space. There's the light freighter for like Firefly. There's the behemoth, which is like a giant military or generation ship of some type. And then of course there's the flagship, which is if you want to do like a Star Trek-y type thing. So you pick like your flavor of ship, and then from there you customize it, pick what kind of propulsion it uses, what kind of weapons or defense, if any, and those sort of things. And from there, there are like hit boxes and stuff for the damage that happens to the ship, and systems can go down and things like that too.
I love that. Now tell me a little bit more about the ship, because like, are the players aware of that happening? Like when the hit boxes and whatnot, because they're in the ship, that's their home basically. Or is that something you keep kind of behind the screen as a GM?
That would be kind of choice, but I would be open about it. Okay. You can do it the way you usually do it in like at least my style of GMing. I don't say, okay, one of the ship damage, you've taken one ship's damage. You just say, oh, communications aren't working well. Right. And then, it starts with 2 hit boxes. One, it's damaged, but it's just a narrative damage. If both are marked, then it's not operating. So they can't use it narratively or mechanically.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then as you play, you can level up your ship. You can like put investments into it, which is like time and resources. And then you can get more boxes and different systems. So there's 6 ship systems, because it's a D6 system. That way the GM can roll a die and be like,
I love that. And I'm assuming the players kind of like agree upon what upgrades they're doing, or is that you as the GM?
No, they decide that 100%.
Okay.
So
I love that.
At one point you're like, okay, you've have enough investments to pick an upgrade is what you call them. So it works very much like the character upgrade or advancements in the PBTA playbooks. It's just for the ship instead.
And
love that.
Do the upgrades to the ship, or the lack thereof, have an impact on how the characters interact, like with their trust? Like if there's a ship and they haven't invested in suitable living quarters, does that put a strain on the relationships within the ship?
Well, you start off with the ship already being a home. Like you don't start off with, oh, this is our new ship. Let's see if we, it's, you start off.
It's a cargo ship. Let's get some bunks.
Yeah. So you actually start off with, you agree on all the places together, like during world creation, like these are all the places on our ship. These are all the places scenes can happen. So we have a galley. Oh no, we have a mess hall, whatever it is. Yeah. So there's little check boxes for all of that. One of the questions is, okay, do we have bunks? Do we have crew quarters? Is there a captain's quarters? Do we have guest, accommodations, whatever? So you agree on all of that together. And different ships have different options there, because obviously the options for the flagship are going to be very different than the living being.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And so they choose that. And then each playbook has some options of personal things that only they can add to the ship. So when you create your character, there's a choice of different things. So if you play the civilian, which is, you can flavor it a bunch of different ways by picking different backgrounds. You could be a Nara, or you could be Quark, or you can be, a business person, a diplomat, or a religious leader are the kind of 3 backgrounds you can pick there. So you can be like Karin or any of those things. Karin's a terrible person, don't be them, but
I got you.
Yeah. But as an example, and in that playbook, you can choose, there's like a formal meeting room, lavish accommodations, like you can make your room super opulent, or or a third choice, and you pick whichever one you want and you add that to the ship from the jump during world creation. So you already have a very customized, unique vessel that all of you have some attachment to and special places in.
I am geeking out so hard about this because like I said, sci-fi is my jam, and my favorite game that didn't get very far just because of schedules and players dropping out and whatnot. All the players were able to create their own alien race, and we went through the design of the ship, and unfortunately not a lot of the players were so into it they did not care about the ship at all. But me and actually Connell, the GM at the time, and some other people, we were just like, I'm drawing the designs, I'm drawing like these scenic like cinematic shots so we can get the idea of it, and then my brain takes off. I'm like, okay, so like a security system, you'd need to get like passages through, and you could see it. Connell's just going, it's too far.
Yeah.
Yes. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Now
but this sounds amazing. I'm really into it.
It's very rules light. So like a lot of that is narrative. Like you can add different things. Like the ship like fixes or heals like 1 damage per day of in-game time just automatically. Okay. And that can be hand waved with, off screen people are fixing it. Or, there's little bots that do that for us. Or it's an animal that heals, like whatever it is. So there's the mechanics get what it is, but it's not like super crunchy.
Yeah, no, if it's not super crunchy, that kind of brings the question, because you mentioned you could be a civilian. I'm assuming there's an option where you can be a crew as well. Or is there like you're one or the other? You're either a civilian on the ship or you're a crew, or you a blend? Like, is it kind of whatever story you guys decide you're telling? Or?
Yeah, so in Powered by the Apocalypse, there are things called playbooks. And they're more, at least in my design, it's more archetypes than jobs. Yeah. Everyone is part of the crew on the ship. So the civilian would be like Anara is part of Serenity's crew. Like maybe not like technically, but she's there, right? She's part of it.
Right.
So it's
she's there for the ride.
she's part of that family. So she might be on there for her own business venture, but she's still part of the crew as it is. Contributes and gets them out of jams with her influence and things like that a lot.
Right.
So that's more what it is. So there's archetypes. So the civilian is so the different playbooks, there's 10 of them. There's a lot. So the civilian is like I said, like the entrepreneur, diplomat, or a religious leader who's on board your ship for some reason. So basically, they are still part of the family. It's important to know that. And then there's the explorer, who is someone who is after looking for discovery, either like fame through discovery, or maybe there's something that they're looking for, a cure for something specific, or like they have a quest that they're on for something. And that's a lot of times like Daniel Jackson from Stargate, or so things like that. So they have these things. And Picard is very much like, especially later when they start having him being so into archaeology, like he's very driven by just that thirst for knowledge. There's the gifted, which is someone who has like extra brain powers. And so that would be like you can flavor that as the professional, the hunted, or the professional, the hunted. I should know all these by heart. I've been talking constantly. But anyways.
Sleep deprived.
Super sleep deprived.
Like, you're good.
I'm on more like 3 hours sleep because I'm trying to get all the graphics done and everything. It's fine. So like if you're the professional, you're more Deanna Troi. Like everyone probably knows that your species has these powers and they know why and it's accepted. If you're the hunted, you might be more like River from Firefly, who's like, this isn't a normal thing. Somebody maybe did this to you and they're after you, and you're trying to handle how to use these powers. So that each playbook can be flavored very differently with their background choices. And you also get skills, which is not something that's usually Powered by the Apocalypse. And I think it's something that's very integral to sci-fi, is what you know and what you learn is so important.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
that is absolutely
there's
fantastic.
a bunch of them. And then there's like the Rebel, which can be like a Mel Reynolds is a good one, Kira Nerys, Belana Torres, all these ones. And then of course the one we all love, the Unfamiliar, which is like the Data or Odo, 7 of 9, Kosh on Babylon 5. If you're talking about like original Star Trek, like it would be Spock, because he was like the weird odd one out who's trying to learn about human emotions. That's kind of like the arc of that playbook. Okay. Yeah, so each playbook is more.
I'm so happy you said Babylon 5, because I was looking at the list. I'm like, I don't see it. Yes. And you said like, yes, okay.
It totally does Babylon 5, 100%.
Yes.
Babylon 5 is a little bit of a challenge, and so is Deep Space Nine, because it's not like a ship that travels.
Yeah, so it's like a community hub almost.
Yeah. So you can definitely do it, but it takes a little. But you just have to be, as a GM, creative about bringing things to them rather than them going to things.
Yeah. I love that like a lot.
I mean, definitely, we've got Connell in the chat who's definitely impressed with the idea as well. I think it sounds fantastic. I mean, I do enjoy Powered by the Apocalypse games. I haven't played as many as I'd like to, other than Monster of the Week and Avatar Legends. I had to struggle there to remember that title. But
2 words, and he struggled.
I know it was Avatar something, but I can't remember what it was. But yeah, I think, and the additions that you've kind of added to the system, I think they would work really well, especially the skills, because like playbooks in other Powered by the Apocalypse, they've got their moves, but there's no actual skills.
Yeah, and that was, I really wanted it to be narrative still. I've seen, there have been other Powered by the Apocalypse hacks that added skills in very crunchy ways. I also really wanted it to be a very elegant system, something that was very easy and in the kind of same vein as Apocalypse World, kind of the one that started it all, like a very narrative-driven, kind of flowing game that goes easily. So the skills you just add on top of any role that you can convince me as a GM like makes sense. So if you, one of my favorite things though, and I will like brag about this a little bit, there's a backstory question, and that's how you get your skills. So when you pick your background, you pick your background, like for the entrepreneur, just because I was working in that playbook right before we started going, it asks, mark 2 things that you would do for a profit and mark one and cross out one thing you'd never do. And then, and then there's a pick list. It's like, take out the competition will give you criminality, or like using, smoozing in society gives you politics. So you pick 2, and those are your 2 starting skills. And then the one you cross off, you can't actually choose that skill till much later in advancement. And like, finally you can unlock the one that you crossed out.
Because you can always change.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
I really like that.
I'm proud of that part. That is an amazing
I love
touch.
That. I was actually telling John last week, like I need something to split up my fantasy. Like I'm running a fantasy game now. I need something before my next one because I know I'm going to run household. And I was like, I'll just come up with something. I'm sitting there going, I'm going to have to get my hands on this.
Well, the quick start rules are dropping probably in the next 12 hours. So we'll make sure you get that.
There we
go. So now that we've talked about the game, and it does sound absolutely fantastic, can you tell us about the Kickstarter?
Yes. The Kickstarter is starting in tomorrow morning. So July 9th, Pacific time, like probably like 5 or 6 a.m. Pacific time, whatever time. It depends how much I can actually sleep. And
don't mind me, I'm doing math.
Yeah, it's just fine. Yeah. So we're going to have obviously the digital tier where you can get the PDF of the final game. There will be the Kickstart rules there, the Kickstart rules, whatever it is.
That works.
Same,
that really works.
Both of them. Yeah, and it's a really beautiful 30-page book that also has the character sheets and the ship sheets in the back, so you can print them off real easy. There's a link to a Google Drive that you can click on, and there's pre-gen characters. We didn't include the pre-gens in the actual Quick Start, but you can download those real fast and print them off. And we're going to be adding adventures throughout the Kickstarter. So if you go back to that, there's a link in there. It's goldenlassogames.com/downloads. And if you go back throughout the Kickstarter, we'll have more adventures and stuff written there.
Fantastic.
We want to do a full color. The illustration and the art is beautiful. I lucked out, and I found he goes by Brian Vector Artist is his like working name because he doesn't want to use his actual name.
Yep, I know how that is.
But his art is just stunning. I found it early on. Like I've been working on Starscape for 4 years, so I found it like a year into the process, and a lot of his art actually inspired the game, which has been great to like work side by side and have this vision that like is being brought to life. And so it's just going to be really beautiful. So we want a full color book. There's going to be soft cover available. There's going to be a special edition Kickstarter only hardcover available. We're going to do an adventure set. And then I also have some really great people coming on to do extra adventures as stretch goals. So my friend Kai, who's from Transplanter RPG, will be writing. They're in my actual play of Starscape I'm running right now on my channel. Sydney Icarus, who wrote Decaying Orbits, one of the descended from the Queen hacks. It's about like a decaying orbit and a thing crashing into space. It's amazing. They're just fantastic. B. Zelda, and then Emily St. James, who actually is a really well-known like TV and movie critic, who also happens to be a friend and helped me like play test it. So she's gonna write an adventure for us too, which is very exciting to have like amazing writers like help us do adventures as stretch goals.
That's exciting.
That sounds absolutely phenomenal, and I for one can't wait to see it. I think you've definitely sold me on it.
Thank you.
I love how you've got so much support on it too. Like I don't. How many of there are you? I just saw that question in chat, and it's a valid question. You're like, you say we. I'm like, how big?
It's me. It's me. Like I say we because it sounds very official and it fakes people into thinking like. Yep. But I am a one woman show company. I do have an amazing team. They're freelancers that I've like that are working on it and have been hired to do it. Like my layout artist, Bora, she's absolutely fantastic. She's doing an amazing job with it. Like I said, Brian, like the whole team they're just so talented. And I've just been really lucky that they were willing to take my money and work on my project.
That's fantastic. I love that. I do the same thing though, so I totally get it. I was like, "Oh, we'll do this," and I was, "Who's we?" Like,
yeah, we. Yeah, it sounds more impressive.
The little voices in my head.
It does. It sounds official, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it does.
Yeah,
lends some authority to what I'm saying. I am also really excited because, again, like we've been talking about my company and its mission. The 5 team members who are the artists and layout and editor and myself are all from underrepresented, communities. So we're either women, BIPOC, or non-binary. So everyone's
that is fantastic.
Yeah,
that's wonderful.
And I do believe that's pretty much all we've kind of got time for tonight. All right. Kimi, thank you ever so much for coming on the show and talking to us about Golden Lasso Games and all the project you got going.
Yeah,
it sounds absolutely phenomenal, and we cannot wait to see just what the future holds for you. And we know that a Bluey game is in that future.
Yeah, it's gotta be. Like,
it's gotta be.
I know.
You've got kids, I've got kids. We owe it.
We'll make it happen. Yeah. So if people are interested, they can go to goldenlassogames.com. That's where all my stuff is. That's kind of the hub. And then specifically for the Kickstarter, if you go to goldenlassogames.com/Kickstarter, it will redirect you to the Kickstarter. It's much easier to remember than the wild long Kickstarter links and stuff. So
right, yeah.
And where can people find you on social media as well if they wanted to kind of follow you and interact with you, as it were?
Yes. So I have a lot of social media presence. You can find me at Golden Lasso Girl is like me directly from my personal accounts usually. Golden Lasso Games is like my company account. On X only, it is Golden Lasso RPGs because games didn't fit. It was one letter too long, and Golden Lasso Game was like weird. I don't know. So I went with RPGs.
That works.
It works.
Yeah.
Same message.
Yeah,
Gets the
exactly.
Okay, I also want to thank everyone in the chat who's joined us this evening.
Yeah.
Guys, we could not do this without your support. It means the world to us. Atlas, I want to thank you for spending some time with us today. Do you want to tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Atlas Ursa. Atlas like the Titan, Ursa like the bear.
Okay, as for me, you can find me at natural.juan on most of the social medias. I'm also behind the Too Legit to Crit social media presences. And if you like what we do and you want to see more, give us a like, a rating, subscribe, or even just tell your friends about us. Spread the word. We love being part of this community. We want to kind of grow with it. But most importantly of all, I want to send a big thank you to everyone who's taken time out of their busy day to listen to us waffle on about tabletop role-playing games. Thank you very much, and good night.